Beauty and wealth have been powerful magnets since the beginning of time. Nowadays, we follow celebrities assuming that their money and looks bring them more happiness. What if an obsession with beauty turned into madness? Or if to become rich, you wouldn't mind taking some lives? Facelift unveils the dark side of these two magical universes, beauty and money, exposing the truth and trade offs behind those glamorous facades. It has suspense, it starts with a murder and implies there is more to come, and there are anonymous characters with bad intentions watching our protagonists, and we don't know what they're going to do. It is also psychological, dark, permeating the suspense. There are moral issues that will make the reader wonder how far one could and should go for what they want. It all started with my partner in crime and co-author, Trace Sherer. Trace is the author of the inspiring nonfiction Nerves of Steel. I highly recommend you check it out. And he was a lawyer working with malpractice. So, dealing with doctors, he had this feeling that plastic surgeons were not the most altruistic types and came up with the idea of writing a suspense about an ambitious plastic surgeon that marries old money and gets involved with murder. 20 years ago, Trace put this first draft on paper, and since it needed more information, he just let it rest. Now, after releasing Nerves of Steel, and now he's embracing his career as an author, he decided to improve and finalize this novel. When we first talked, we saw an opportunity to work together, not only because Trace was a nonfiction writer and I had vast experience with novels, but because I was very familiar with the topics involved and I could bring depth and realism to his initial idea. So Trace gave me the freedom and the privilege of rewriting a whole new novel based on his initial premise. And when it was ready, we fine tuned it together. The main topics of this book are wealth and beauty, and we thought in a suspense how to use these elements, and we thought that more than entertaining, the message behind Facelift could be useful in a world that everyone lives on their phones, and especially the young people are building their identities and, more importantly, their self-esteem, comparing themselves to men and women who have thousands of followers. So we showed in this book the unhappy dark side that it's not often showed on social media, never showed. For over a decade, for instance, I worked for an investment company who dealt with oil and gas, and most of our clients were millionaires. We spent several months a year socializing in their yachts, private jets, and incredible parties in the hottest spots in Europe. With that came friendships that helped me see everything that money and good looks could not buy. So most of my novels, not only Facelift, have at least one mega wealthy character who has a big problem that he or she cannot solve. And again, my goal is to demystify the notion that rich people are happier than we are. So something else that I brought to Facelift was, from previous experience, was the details of this plastic surgery world that Trace had envisioned, and all the elements that affect one's self-esteem when you have plastic surgery. Years ago, I conducted a study for a university in Rio de Janeiro, which is one of the meccas of plastic surgery in the world, about buying habits of high class women. And it turned out that not shoes, but plastic surgery, it was what they consumed the most. Liposuction and breast augmentation, for example, were as common as going to the dentist. And I discovered that because life in Rio revolves around the beach, It promotes enormous body cult. And I had the chance to interview dozens of women who went through cosmetic procedures of different sorts and how they felt about them. The ones that worked, the ones that didn't work. So what is in this book is as realistic as those experiences that I witnessed. So one more thing, something interesting also was that Trace initially had request that I modernize his story, which was initially set up in the 70s, in the late 70s. But we decided against this for three reasons. First one is that we wanted to show readers how an obsession with beauty could be intense even long before social media. Now, in times of inclusion, and especially after pandemic, we found it also relevant to place our story in the 80s, in the middle of the AIDS epidemic, to show how hard it was being homosexual in those days. And other than the usual prejudice, there was this wrong correlation that just by being homosexual, automatically you could have the disease. So I included some characters, some doctors, to give us the perspective of those who endured those hard days in which even patients might not want to be treated by a healthy gay doctor. And finally, in the 80s, there was this brilliant Brazilian plastic surgeon called Dr. Pitangui, who revolutionized the industry, becoming one of the most famous plastic surgeons in the world. His clientele included celebrities and royalty from different countries, and among the jet set, the expression vacationing in Brazil became a synonym with having work done with Pitangui. I met him years ago, and finding him such a genius, I wanted to pay homage to his brilliant work by bringing our character to Brazil to be one of his apprentices. Itangui had a fancy clinic in Rio, but did pro bono work to the poor in a public hospital, claiming that everyone had the right to beauty, especially to fix issues that affected your identity and self esteem. He was a celebrity himself. He owned a gorgeous island where the Brazilian media chronicled his social gatherings in his mansion and yacht. So the story, our story, Facelift, starts in Boston, and we give readers a taste of this fancy beach life in Brazil. Then we go back to the United States. Trace and I hope that other than entertainment with all these ups and downs, the story will stay with you as a reminder not to be jealous of anyone you see on Instagram, because you never know the price they have paid.